What if I told you an Iranian intelligence officer once knelt down in a tiny Filipino church, not to spy but to cry? He had no orders, no earpiece, no mission, just the sound of a choir singing softly in a language he didn't understand, and the crushing weight of a life built on silence, deception, and fear. His name was Reza, and he had spent most of his adult life slipping through borders, slipping into lives that weren't his, chasing whispers and secrets across deserts and capitals. He was good at it, so good, in fact, that few ever even saw him coming. But the moment he stepped onto the worn stone tiles of that chapel in Iloilo, something inside him cracked. He didn't know it yet, but that moment would become the beginning of a new life. It's hard to imagine a man like Reza walking among market vendors in the Visayas, sweating under the tropical sun, saying "Salamat po" with a heavy accent. Harder still to believe he would one day teach Sunday school to children, telling stories not of political power or military strength, but of grace, of forgiveness, of the cross. But back then, before his name was whispered reverently by locals and churchgoers alike, he was just another shadow. He had followed a target, an exiled professor suspected of harboring anti-regime documents, to a sleepy corner of the Philippines. The assignment was routine: observe, record, report, disappear. But the Philippines had something Reza had never encountered before: a disarming kind of openness. People who looked you in the eyes and smiled without fear. Vendors who called you kuya like you were their older brother. Children who waved at him with sticky fingers and shrieked with laughter, even though they had no idea who he really was. It was uncomfortable at first, disarming. Vulnerability wasn't something Reza had been trained to handle. But it was the church that truly unsettled him. A small stone chapel tucked between old houses and dusty roads. No grandeur, no statues of gold. Just people, ordinary people, who sang like they believed every word. He had wandered in once, by accident, trying to follow his mark. But he didn't leave right away. The air inside was cool, peaceful. And for a man used to navigating tension, it was like suddenly walking underwater. A teenage girl handed him a piece of bread during communion. He took it, out of politeness, perhaps, or maybe instinct. He wasn't sure, but as he chewed, he felt something he hadn't felt in years: stillness. Not the kind you fake to avoid detection. The kind that breaks you open from the inside. He kept returning. At first it was only to monitor the target, but eventually the mission felt like a shadow compared to the pull of that place. That music. That strange comfort in strangers' prayers. There was a woman. Anna. She worked at a nearby clinic and volunteered at the church. Reza never meant to speak to her. But one evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills and the sky turned the color of ripe mangoes, she offered him a bowl of arroz caldo and said, "You look like you carry something heavy." He had smiled, nodded, thanked her in broken English. But something in his chest twisted painfully. She wasn't wrong. Years of assignments had carved him hollow. He had seen betrayals unfold over tea, watched lives destroyed from behind mirrored glass. He had been loyal, efficient, invisible, but never known, never free. Anna became his first true conversation in months, then his second, then his reason for staying longer than the mission required. She asked questions gently, not about his job. She never pushed, just about where he grew up, what his mother was like, if he had siblings. Reza lied at first. It was reflex. But the lies started unraveling as easily as the soft thread on a worn hem. One day she handed him a Bible. Not with pressure, just quiet suggestion. He accepted it. Not because he believed, but because he wanted to understand what made her eyes light up when she spoke about faith. He read it alone, in his small rented room, between reports and false names. And something strange began to happen. It didn't happen all at once. It was slow. A whisper here, a phrase that lingered there, a verse about peace that was not of this world. And for the first time, Reza wondered what that could possibly mean. He had grown up under the weight of expectations, ideology, nationalism. He had trained to serve a system, not a soul. But here was a book that spoke of a God who wanted hearts, not fear, mercy, not manipulation. One rainy night, as thunder rolled over the sleepy town and the power flickered out, Reza sat in the darkness of that same chapel. The doors were unlocked. They always were. He wasn't on a mission anymore. He was looking for something he couldn't name. And when the priest approached him gently and said, "You're welcome here, whoever you are," Reza felt the tears come without warning. For the first time in over 2 decades, he wasn't pretending. He was just human. And that was the moment everything began to change. Not the way he'd planned, but perhaps exactly the way it was meant to. Reza had always believed in control, in preparation. His work depended on it. The agency trained him not just to speak languages and disappear in crowds, but to read every flicker of expression, anticipate every move, and remain utterly unmoved himself. That was the rule. Never attach, never feel. So when he first stepped into the Philippines, he expected what his handlers described. A country warm on the surface, poor in the background, chaotic and sentimental, easy to move through, easier to manipulate. He was taught to blend, not bond. But no training had prepared him for a place like this. He arrived in Iloilo with fake documents, a cover as an Iranian businessman exploring investment opportunities. No one questioned him. The airport guards waved him through with tired smiles. A cab driver told him stories about his grandchildren on the way to the pension house, proudly showing pictures on a cracked phone. At first, Reza nodded politely, eyes scanning exits, memorizing license plates, but something lingered in that conversation, an absence of fear. In Tehran, you watched your words. In Istanbul, you masked your intent. Even in European cities, silence was safer. But here, people simply shared. Their lives, their jokes, their food, with no suspicion. Just trust. The first time Reza noticed this deeply was at a carinderia near the church. He had gone in out of curiosity, led by the smell of garlic and frying oil. The woman behind the counter, her apron stained with years of cooking, asked no questions about his accent. She pointed to the trays of food and said, "Try lang. Kung di mo gusto, libre na lang. If you don't like it, it's free." It stunned him. Reza ordered sinigang. He wasn't even sure what it was. The sourness surprised him at first. Sharp, almost aggressive. But then came the warmth of the broth, the softness of the meat, the slight crunch of the vegetables. The woman smiled as she watched him eat, and when he nodded, she simply said, "Ayan, may Tagalog ka na. Marunong ka na magsinigang." She had welcomed him in with food. No questions, no assumptions, just presence. He returned the next day. And the next. The second moment that caught him off guard came on a rainy afternoon. Reza had started lingering near the church, watching not just his target anymore, but the rhythms of the community. Children playing with homemade kites in the street. Teenagers practicing dance routines to loud music by the church steps. Grandmothers in slippers handing out plastic-wrapped candies to everyone who passed. That afternoon, as rain began to pour without warning, Reza ducked under the awning of a Sari store. A boy, no older than 8, was standing nearby with a soaked school bag and sandals almost falling apart. Reza could see the child was cold, shivering. Without thinking, Reza took off his light jacket and handed it to the boy. The boy hesitated, then said, "Salamat, kuya." with a smile so wide it felt like it cracked something inside Reza's chest. He didn't know why he had done it. He had spent his whole life following orders, watching from a distance. That simple act, offering warmth, was not part of the mission. It felt good. No, not good. Right? The final moment, the one that truly began to turn the tide inside him, happened during a church service the following week. He had been attending now, not just for surveillance, but out of something he couldn't yet admit. Need. A yearning. The choir was singing that day, voices soft but full. One of the girls, perhaps 16 or 17, stepped forward to read a passage from the Gospel. Her voice trembled slightly. Not from fear, from feeling. She read, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God." And then she paused. Just for a second. A deep breath, a glance upward like she needed the strength to keep reading. Reza felt it. The words didn't just echo in the stone walls. They pierced. The word peacemaker hit differently when your whole life had been about secrets and sabotage. What was he, really? A destroyer of peace? That night, Reza couldn't sleep. He lay awake in his room, listening to the distant sound of karaoke from a neighboring house, and wondered, for the first time, what it would be like to choose peace. Not as a tactic, but as a path. The faces from the past came flooding back, the names he had forgotten, the lives he had impacted without ever seeing the consequence. He tried to justify it. Mission, nation, greater good. But the girl's voice echoed louder. Peacemaker. Could he become one? Was it even possible? For the first time in decades, he wasn't looking for a way out. He was looking for a way forward. And maybe, just maybe, that way started with truth. The real kind. Not the version written in reports, but the kind you speak with tears in your eyes, with your hands open, with your soul exposed. Something in Reza had shifted. He didn't fully understand it. But he knew this. He didn't want to go back. Not just to Iran, but to the man he used to be. The night it happened, the air was thick with candle smoke and whispered prayers. The small chapel was dimly lit for the vigil. It was Holy Week, a time when the entire town seemed to breathe in unison. Soft, slow, reverent. Reza sat alone in the third pew from the front, watching the flickering flame of a candle beside the altar. His eyes were hollow, not from fatigue, but from something deeper. Something unraveling. He had spent the entire day pacing in his room, holding the Bible Anna had given him weeks ago. There was a tremble in his hands he couldn't explain, a pressure in his chest like a dam about to break. His target, the professor, had left the country days ago. Reza had reported nothing. No files sent, no recordings. The line had gone cold. And with it, his old world began to fade. That evening, after the service, Father Benito approached him quietly. "You come often," the priest said, eyes kind, steady, "but you carry something heavy." Reza opened his mouth, then closed it, his jaw clenched, his fingers curled into fists on his lap. He had rehearsed this moment in his head 100 times. But now, with the priest standing there, the sacred hush of the chapel pressing in, he could barely breathe. "I am not who they think I am," he whispered finally. Father Benito said nothing, just waited. Reza took a deep breath. "I was sent here by people who don't believe in grace. I worked for a government that sees faith as weakness. I've lied to everyone, even her." The priest sat beside him. No judgment, just presence. "I watched this community through a lens of suspicion. I thought kindness was a strategy. I thought God was a myth." His voice cracked. "But here, in this place, with these people, something happened. Tears came freely now. I don't want to be that man anymore. Father Benito nodded slowly. You are not the first to come here looking for something else, and finding yourself. Reza's shoulders shook. For the first time, he wasn't just breaking protocol, he was breaking open. The next morning, Reza did something he never imagined possible. He stood before the congregation. Anna was there, her eyes locked on his. She didn't know what he was about to say. No one did. I have lied to many of you, he began, voice trembling. I came here with false names, false reasons. I came here as a spy. Gasps, a few murmurs. But somewhere along the way, I became a man. Your kindness did that. Your faith. This church. This country. The room was silent. A silence so thick it rang in his ears. I came to observe a man, but I was the one being observed, by God. And he saw a soul, lost, tired, afraid. He looked around the chapel. The same walls that had once felt foreign now felt like home. I don't know what happens next, but I know this. I choose peace. I choose truth. I choose to stay. Then, turning to Anna, he added softly, and if you can forgive me, maybe we can start again. Honestly this time. She didn't speak, just walked forward and embraced him, her forehead resting gently on his chest. And in that moment, Reza understood what it meant to be free, not politically, not geographically, but spiritually. In the days that followed, the community didn't exile him. They embraced him. They gave him a chance to serve, to build, to teach. He helped repair the church roof. He cooked during fiestas. He learned to pray in Tagalog. He even found himself mentoring young men who had grown up without fathers, telling them not of tactics and politics, but of choices and redemption. His story began to spread, not as a tale of espionage, but as a testament to what the Philippines could do to the soul of a man. And it wasn't just the beaches, or the food, or the language. It was something else entirely. It was the way a stranger could become a brother, the way a sinner could find sanctuary, the way a spy could kneel before God and rise again, not as an agent of power, but of peace. Today they still call him Kuya Reza, and if you ask him where he's from, he'll smile and say, I was born in Iran, but I found my real life here, in this small church, in this beautiful, forgiving land. Because sometimes the most unexpected places become the most sacred, and sometimes the people you were sent to deceive become the ones who save you. That is the power of the Filipino heart, and that is why the world should never underestimate the Philippines. It doesn't just welcome you, it transforms you.